Hey Saints fans, welcome to another installment of Marymount Athletics summer segment, Behind the Moment. Every Thursday over the summer, we've been diving back into some of the greatest moments in each program's history. Today, we welcome back members of the 01-02 women's basketball team that advanced to the NCAA Final Four, the furthest any program has gone in Marymount history. Joining us today to talk about that season are three Marymount Hall of Famers, former head coach Bill Finney and former standouts Candice Signor-Brown and Ashlee Rogers. Thank you for joining us today. The Marymount women's basketball program is clearly nationally recognized on the Division III front as you started building a powerhouse back in 1983. By the time you're in the 01-02 season, you already hoisted 7 CAC titles. However, that year, the team didn't win the title, but kept their eyes on bigger goals and advanced to the national semifinals for the first time in program history. I know you've had a lot of big teams in program history. What do you feel made this team click the way they did?
I think it was overcoming adversity throughout the season, especially our injury problems that we had that made this team a special team by the end. Every season we start off with the intention of being the best we can be as players and to make the team the best it can be. And in this case, we had so many injuries during that year that we did not even have a semblance of what we projected to be our starting lineup for the beginning of the season and throughout the season, and including the Final Four games when we were at the sectionals and the Sweet 16 and the championship.
Candice, I want to dive right into the tournament, specifically with Salisbury. So the team split with the Seagulls during the regular season, then fell in a tough battle during the CAC title game. We won't get into that, but fortunately you were able to see the team for a fourth time in the NCAA tournament on their home court. Tell us what the thoughts were going into that sectional semifinal matchup and what the team felt after ending their season.
I think that, it was kind of crazy because here we are seeing Salisbury for a fourth time. And it is, one of those things of like both teams know very well what the other is going to do. But I think that for our team in particular, we were just like, hey, they got one when it came to the CAC championship game, and this was ours to, get. We knew that if we had the opportunity to beat them, we were literally just one step away from having the opportunity to get to a Final Four. And so I think that we just really had a attitude of like, we weren't going to do anything but leave it all out on the floor, give 110%, and, make sure that we came away with the win that mattered the most to us at that particular time.
Was there any sort of sit in the back of your head that CAC title game and getting some revenge for losing that one though?
Absolutely. Like when you think about how far we had come, like Coach was talking about the adversity that we had experienced over the course of the season. And I believe it was a close game in that CAC game. And it was, we were bitter and thinking like, hey, we thought our season was over. Having the opportunity to get that at-large bid was just like new life for us, and we were going to really run with it and do what we could. And so I definitely think that it was, one of those things of like, hey, we got to get some revenge here, got to get some get back. And having the opportunity to beat them on their home floor, I think was even sweeter.
Yeah. And Ashlee, with that win over Salisbury, the team booked its first ever trip to the Elite Eight, taking on King's College. Talk about that game and grinding out the 3-point victory to extend the season in championship weekend.
Well, I think we had another opportunity to get back at a team that had beaten us earlier in the season. Kings had beaten us in our championship of the tip-off tournament by like 4 points. So it seems like kind of a fitting opportunity for us have that second shot at Kings the very next day after we had beat Salisbury. I think we also viewed it as a little bit of home court advantage since we had played there so much, and we had a great crowd that came to us. And I think that the other thing, just kind of an overcap of the weekend before we touch on Kings specifically, we talked about adversity we had to overcome. I think that was a weekend that really looked at playing for Kristen McGorry. She was our starting point guard. She went out, I believe, against CNU in that first round of the NCAA tournament that we played. So we went to the Sweet 16 without our starting point guard. We had Katie Hessler and we had Jen Schmidt sharing a lot of those duties. So I think it was just another game that showed that, we were able to pull together, coach's plan, group that was really competitive and really hated to lose. And I think all of those things together really is what held us to do the things that we were able to do that year, and specifically that weekend. And then you look at the Kings game, in the second half, we had a 10-point lead that we saw dwindle pretty quickly. They were really giving a lot of issues. We were struggling to break the pressure. And, Coach made a move that he had made different times throughout the year, and that was moving Candice to a point guard position because her athletic ability and able to get the ball up is just something a lot of teams really struggle to stop. And I think she had 9 of her 20 points in the last 3 minutes of the game. You talk about her being an All-American. I mean, she was a clutch player, and I think we all really did a good job of fulfilling our roles when it came to times. And Candice is someone that we knew that we could rely on down the stretch. And she did that for us. And Kings didn't, they kept battling as well. I think that's what made it such a great game. They tied it up after one of their players stole the ball, made a layup, and got fouled. She tied it the game at 64. And then Candice got fouled. She made one of 2 foul shots. And I could tell she was upset that she had missed that one. And they did it again. They fouled her again. And, she came back on the line and she hit those 2 free throws at the end, which gave us that 3-point lead. So Candice was really big in the clutch at the end of that game, which was huge in us stealing that victory and moving to the Final Four.
Man, I remember none of that. It's all a blur.
No, well, I remember also at the end of that game, there was a critical, right within the last minute, a critical steal by Annetta Benjamin, who joined us at midseason, transferred in, and she made an absolute critical steal that gave us the ball back where Candice then was able to get fouled, to get those foul shots. And that was another part of, everybody on the team stepping up. It was amazing how everyone on the team stepped up throughout the year, various times, to help, get us to our eventual destination, the Final Four.
So, Coach, just to keep going on that thought, when they pulled out that 3-point win and you're going to championship weekend for the first time, you've been there since the beginning. Tell me kind of the thought process of finally punching that ticket to the Final Four.
Well, first, Kyle, I never saw the final 3 seconds. I put my head down between my knees and I said to Wicker, tell me what's going on. I could not bear to see the final shot go in for Kings because we had lost 2 critical games previously, the year before at Messiah at the last second and Emmanuel, which happens to be 2 teams that had just gone in the Final Four, and we were that close with them. So that gave me kind of a belief that, hey, we belong with the elites in the country right now. We had beaten 2 teams that had come so close to the Final Four. And now all we had to do was, beat Kings, but I couldn't watch the last 3 seconds. I put my head down and Wicker said, we won. And I said, then we jumped. Go ahead back to your question again.
Candice, although the weekend in Indiana didn't result in a national championship, it still holds up as the furthest any team at Marymount has ever gone in the national tournament. Tell us what the feeling was like for the team stepping on the big stage like that.
I think that feeling was indescribable in the sense that, it was the first time for us to, get to the Final Four. But I think it really started on the send-off. I think it was Channel 7 came and they did like a news clip that was on the news, and it was, some fans had come. And so it was like a big deal then. And then just getting to, the Final Four and getting to the site You know, like I tell my players now, even as a Division III player, getting to the Final Four is so special, in the sense that we did autographs as a team. We, you know, met with fans that were, you know, in Rose-Hulman. And we also, every time that we went back to our hotel rooms, there was a different NCAA gift left on our bed. It was special. I mean, and I think for our entire team, whether you were playing, whether you were support, our team manager, we were stoked about being there. So I don't know that it made a difference whether we won or lost. I still wear my national finalist ring like I won, but it was just having the experience of being there. And now being in the business and understanding really how hard it is to get to a Final Four, I appreciate those moments more now than I probably ever have, because it is a grind. And for us to have experienced that in our lifetime, I think it will be stories we tell our kids. It will be stories that we tell, you know, our colleagues and also our teams now. And I just can't even put into words how exciting it was, and then how like juiced you were the entire weekend. It didn't matter what was going on. And yeah, we played some tough teams in playing, you know, Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and the Wisconsin teams are always really strong because there's only one Division I school in Wisconsin, and then all of the rest of the Division I players go to the other Division III Wisconsin schools. So they're always a tough matchup. And then, you know, DePaul, you know, Huffman does a great job up there. They were very good as well. And so, I mean, just having the exposure coming from Marymount, I mean, I think it was great. I had an awesome time. And I think that Ashlee would concur that, you know, we were super excited all weekend long.
Yeah, Ash, how about for you as well? Like, tell me what your thoughts were on that weekend.
I mean, I think Candice summed it up pretty well. I think something that we will never forget is getting on the plane and sitting down and buckling our belts, and all of a sudden we get a little shout out from one of the flight attendants about being on the plane and going to the Final Four. And I mean, we felt like celebrities. We felt like we made it. I think, Candice. I think that's something that we all remember and will always cherish. And, you know, I'm still really close with my teammates, and to have that opportunity with a group of people that we genuinely care about, you know, we still keep in touch with. I mean, just being able to do that with that group was a really special moment too that I'll never forget.
Coach Finney, did you have something to add?
Yes, I do. I agree with both Candice and Ashlee. It's a special feeling to be at the Final Four at whatever level you're at, Division I, II, or III. And in this case, I remember being on the bus and seeing the billboard signs as we were riding to the gym for practices, announcing the 4 teams, you know, in Terre Haute for that weekend. But I also remember this. I remember the fans who followed us out there, and the Roger Rapps and the Corneliuses and the Bradburys and Linda McMahon, who came out with Dr. Bunchu and Mrs. Bunchu, and they painted their faces blue and white and were in the stands supporting us for all of the games. I believe Dr. Bunchu was the only president in attendance of the Final Four teams. And that was extremely special, not for me, but to see what how he was supporting Marymount University in total. That was a tremendous, uplifting moment for me as a coach. So I do agree with Ashlee. It's something that we were, at that moment in time, one of the 4 top teams in the country. And they deserved it. I'm talking about the Saints deserved it, and they will cherish that forever.
Coach, I want to stick with you here on this. This team was loaded with talent. You've got 5 Marymount Hall of Famers, and then you, of course, as a Hall of Fame coach. What impressed you most about how all this talent came together to be a Final Four squad?
Well, the thing about that is, Kyle, it's not the 5 best players, but it's the 5 players who play the best on the court at any given time. And that's what our season was all about this particular year. Dave Fasanoli, the Gazette, did an article at the end of the season saying, because he had talked to me prior to the season and asked me who my projected lineup might be. And at the end of the season, that projected lineup started 10 of the 34 games that we played. 10 of the 34. The rest of it was our freshmen of Schmidt and Duval, who was a really critical player to start and had knee problems and would have been really helpful to be there. Desiree Duval and Katie Hessler and Angie Ferry, who was, I believe, a sophomore at that point, did a great job for us. They all stepped in, and Christina Lingenfelder, all of them stepped in and took roles of, Candice was out for 2 months. Ashlee was out for a little bit. Jody didn't start with us at the beginning of the season. So all of that was important for the success of this program. And that was the theme for the year, that everyone has to step in and do their part to make this team the best it can be. And they did.
Candice and Ashlee, I'm going to roll right into this. You're now both highly recognized coaches in Division III. Candice, you're at Swarthmore now after a successful run there at Vassar, and Ashlee here at Marymount. Thinking back to that 01-02 season, did you picture yourselves in the positions you are now today and having as much success as you are?
So I don't know that I thought that I would, at that point in 2001, 2002, that I would get into coaching. I literally thought that I would be playing overseas and thinking about that career path. But then when the season was over and, nothing in the overseas market is guaranteed, Coach K, was like suggested coaching, and I wasn't ready to let basketball go anymore. And so getting into coaching, I don't think that you can ever think about like how successful you're going to be. You have a desire to, be the best that you possibly can be. You don't know what institution you'll land at. Coaching is, ever evolving. Sometimes it's like, the door that just keeps going. But I am excited that I get to, share my passion every day. When I talk with recruits all the time, I tell them I don't feel like I have a job. I feel like I get to come to work every day, and I get to, play. I get to impact young people's lives. And so as long as I'm continuing to be passionate about this game, I'm going to keep rolling with it. And hopefully over time, I will have as much success as Coach Finney has. Who knows? He is definitely a legend at the Division III level. But, I will continue to aspire to get there and to continue to take my teams as far as we possibly can go.
Ashlee?
No, I was not thinking about coaching at that time. And when I was graduating, Coach pulled me in his office, and it sounds like maybe a little bit of a similar conversation he had with Candice at some point. What are your next steps? Have you ever thought about coaching? At that point, my teaching degree, and I thought I was going to be a kindergarten teacher. And he's like, well, I know the coach at Gettysburg. He's looking for a graduate assistant. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll connect you to. And I thought about it some more, and I just really wasn't ready to leave the game. It's been a part of my life and my identity for so long. And if it meant that I couldn't play anymore, but still be a part of it and get my master's degree on the side, I was like, sure, why not? And the first time I stepped on the floor with that whistle in my mouth, I was like, okay, this is something I can see myself doing. And 15 years later, here I am, and I'm back at alma mater. And I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to be back at a school that gave me so much. Not just what Coach and my teammates, provided me, but it's interesting what Candice just said about, maybe, one day she'll be as successful as Coach. And I have no doubt that she already is as successful as Coach, because I know she's positively impacting her student athletes the way that Coach had an impact on us. This may not be a surprise, but this coach wasn't always the easiest man to play for. However, he taught us a lot through the game of basketball, a lot of life lessons. I know that I appreciate, and I'm trying to do the same thing with my student athletes, and I have no doubt that Candice is doing the same at Swarthmore.
Coach Finney, let's look on the flip side here. What are your thoughts on these two coming from your roots and the Marymount program and doing the success that they are now today?
Well, I can't tell you that I was out there recruiting back in 2000 and 1999, two players who one was going to take over for me. I can't tell you that I was doing that for a fact, and that the other one would be a highly successful coach at Swarthmore now, and has already done so at Vassar. But I really feel proud of what all of our players did to grow over the 4 years. You know, I know it was tough to play for me. I gave them some really a high bar, and I wanted them to be the best they could be. One of the stories that I got out of the Final Four that I haven't shared was, I can still remember this. We were playing the second game, a consolation game, and the consolation game is hard to get up for at halftime. And this was after Kristen Lingenfelder, Kristen McGrory had gone down, so she was out as a point guard, and Katie Hessler and Jens Schmidt were our point guards. But in this case, Katie Hessler was a freshman, an incoming freshman, and she wasn't an incoming freshman by the end of the season. She gathered everybody together, and she started to read the riot act to them just before we went out for the second half. And I thought to myself, here's a kid that's already grown up. This is exactly what, as a parent, we want our children to get from colleges: grow up, experience, and mature. And she was doing that right now, and I thought, she's going to be fine later on in life. And that's exactly what Ashlee and Candice have done. That's exactly what everyone else before them. It was great to watch kids grow up and become mature adults going through 4 years of Marymount basketball.
I think that's probably a good spot right here to wrap up the conversation. I want to end this giving each of you a chance for final comments on this moment, and maybe give everyone out there a viewpoint they might not see from a box score. Coach, let's start with you again.
The fact that there was such a chemistry developed throughout the season that you couldn't see. You wouldn't see it. And I remember after we played Johns Hopkins and Candice went out with her injury, I called up Steve, and I would do this year in and year out. I'd sit there and I'd figure out, how are we going to do with the coming games, and what is our record going to be, and all that stuff. And I called Steve Wicker up, and I said, Steve, I don't know if we can get to 500 this year right now. Just with all the injuries, I just have no idea what's going to happen. And they were, players were dropping out like one a day with something was going wrong. So to turn what we thought was going to be a 500 season around into where we ended up was the most special thing that I've ever done as far as coaching went. I didn't do it, they did it, but it was a great experience to be on that ride with them.
Candice, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things that you don't get from the box score is the chemistry that we had. But I also think too, what we as players had was respect for one another. We knew that at the end of the day, we were going to have each other's back, and it didn't matter who went down, who needed to step up. We were going to be there for one another, and it was that bigger purpose that drove each one of us to really fulfill our particular role. And I know as coaches, we talk about this often, but I think what doesn't show up in the box score is every single person that particular season mastered their role. And I think that that was what was, most special about this particular unit.
Ashlee, bring us home.
I agree with both of them. I think that's something that, that we haven't really talked about really ever as a group, and that's something that really appreciated with my time and with this team is the faith that was involved, not just the faith of one another and the game plans and stuff, but the religious side of things. I mean, we would pray after every practice, pray before every game, and I just thought that that was such a big part of it, who we were and who we still are at Marymount. I mean, the opportunity to feel that power through prayer and know that God is the one that is ultimately leading us and giving us that strength. Something that we talk about, but I don't think we talk enough about with our program, because that has been a huge asset of our program. And I give Coach a lot of credit for instilling that year in, year out. And I know that's something that made me feel closer to like Candice and Annetta, because that was, you know, their faith was something that they talked a lot about. So I just thought that was something that I never even thought about going in college or experiencing, but I was so grateful because it's been a big part of my life. And also, Candice, you gave me some credit for those, that like recap I gave of the Kings game earlier. Well, really that credit should go to Mrs. Finney and these books that she would put together for us every year. I don't know if you can see it, but I did a little research. You know, Coach always taught us to be prepared. So I did a little, you know, digging in our old files of some of the stuff that Mrs. Finney would give us. And she would give us a book at the end of each season with old articles and press releases. And so I want to give Mrs. Finney a little shout out for all the behind the scenes work that she did for our program and kind of keeping Coach in line at times.
And Ashlee, she gave us some pretty good pasta dinners on certain times as well. And she told me
really good.
One story she still remembers was when we were in New Jersey after Candice had been injured. We were playing, she couldn't remember the name of the team. It was probably Stockton, but she said, I can still recall Candice running up and down the sidelines in the back of the bench because she was so nervous about the game, but she couldn't play in it. And she was yelling at the team, come on, let's go. But she was running back and forth, trying to stay up with the game on the court.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Well, that will wrap up another installment of Behind the Moment. I'd like to thank Coach Finney, Ashlee, and Candice for joining us today and helping us relive a great moment in Marymount Athletics history. Tune in next Thursday as we bring you another installment of Behind the Moment.